Hello and welcome back. You are listening to Unreliable Sources, your biweekly briefing for mystery lovers, thriller junkies, and suspense addicts. I'm Mike Donohue, thriller author and epilogue defender. Let's get into the show. Today we're kicking things off with some book news, including a New Yorker profile of one of the strangest and most charming bookstores in America. We'll also dig into the ongoing debate over book-to-film adaptations, some publishing industry scams that should have every aspiring author paying attention, and a wrap-up from the Left Coast Crime Convention. Plus, we've got a sad farewell to a writer who wore more genre hats than almost anyone this side of Stephen King. Then we'll run through some new and notable releases worth your time, take a deep dive into the amateur sleuth, fiction's most persistent and beloved archetype, and I'll tell you what I've been reading and watching lately, including a slick British heist thriller that might be worth your weekend. Let's roll. Let's start with some recent headlines from the Book and Crime Beat. The New Yorker just ran a profile of Alabama Booksmith in Homewood, Alabama. And if you haven't heard of it, you're in for a treat. Owner Jake Reese is 90 years old, has a ponytail, and runs what might be the only bookstore in America that exclusively sells signed first editions. Almost always at the publisher's cover price. No markup, just signed books displayed cover out like works of art. There are days when not a single customer walks through the door, and yet the store has a thriving international clientele and a busy online business. As the New Yorker piecer puts it, Jake got into book selling for the money and the girls. And now that he's 90, he cares less about both, but he still shows up 7 days a week. I just love everything about this story. Jake Reese might be my new bibliogro. NPR recently ran a fun piece on book-to-film adaptations sparked by the new and controversial Wuthering Heights film, where staffers picked their all-time favorite adaptations. And right around the same time, Cultured magazine ran a more skeptical take. 5 authors getting real about the IP machine and whether a movie deal is actually a writer's dream or something more complicated. Like most things in life, the honest answer is probably a little of both. A great adaptation can bring a whole new audience to a book, and a bad one can feel like watching someone describe your house to a stranger. For crime fiction fans specifically, the adaptation track record is pretty mixed. For every No Country for Old Men or Silence of the Lambs, there is a head-scratcher that makes you wonder if anyone actually read the source material. It's worth checking out both pieces. Links, as always, in the show notes. The New York Times ran a sobering piece on publishing scams. The fake agents, predatory vanity presses, and outright fraud schemes targeting aspiring writers and fueled by the rise of AI. If you or anyone you know is trying to break into the publishing industry, the rule is simple and old. Money flows to the writer, not from them. Legitimate agents don't charge reading fees. Legitimate publishers don't ask for money up front. Any variation on those 2 rules is a big red flag. The 2026 Left Coast Crime Convention just wrapped, and by all accounts, it was a good one. A few Lefty Award winners worth noting. Best debut mystery novel went to Whiskey Business by Adrian Ndobe, and Best Mystery Novel to River of Lies. In the specialty categories, Best Humorous went to Katriana McPherson's Scott's Eggs, and Best Historical Mystery to Rob Osler for The Case of the Missing Maid. Next year, the convention heads to Calgary, Alberta in October. Make note if you've been waiting for an excuse to head north. In some sad news, the reading community recently lost Dan Simmons on February 21st at the age of 77. Most of you might know him as the author of the Hyperion Cantos, grand, ambitious science fiction that won the Hugo and reshaped what the genre could do. He also wrote The Terror, which became the AMC series. But for fans of this show specifically, he belongs here too. Simmons wrote 3 hard-boiled crime novels set in Buffalo featuring ex-con private eye Joe Kurtz. Hard Case, Hard Freeze, and Hard as Nails. Acid etch noir with a protagonist who's barely on the right side of moral collapse. He even dedicated Hard Case to Richard Stark, which tells you everything about his intentions going in. He wore more genre hats than almost anyone, and wore each of them well. He'll be missed. Now let's take a look at what's new and notable in bookstores and on library shelves recently. The Tree of Light and Flowers by Thomas Perry. Perry was a vastly underrated craftsman of the thriller, and this new standalone is already drawing strong early word of mouth. If you've never read this prose pro, this is a solid entry point, and the last one, as Perry passed away last fall. The Crossroads by C.J. Box. Box returns with what looks like another high-stakes Joe Pickett adventure, which at this point is as reliable as a Wyoming winter. If you're a fan, you know exactly what you're getting, and you want it. I Did Not Kill My Husband by Linda Keir. The title alone probably does a lot of the heavy lifting, but early reviews suggest the book earns it. Domestic suspense with a sharp sense of humor built in. Finally, The Best Little Motel in Texas by Lila Lane. A cozy mystery with regional flavor and what sounds like a genuinely fun premise. If you're looking for something lighter, this one's on my radar to scratch my homespun cozy itch. All right, this week's feature is all about one of mystery fiction's most enduring archetypes, the amateur sleuth. And let me start with my 8-year-old self, planted in front of the television every Sunday night watching Jessica Fletcher untangle another murder in Cabot Cove. No badge, no gun, no chain of command, and yet routinely outpacing every sheriff and detective who stumbled through her village. Angela Lansbury planted something in me that decades of crime fiction has only deepened. The archetype actually starts with Poe in 1841. C. Auguste Dupin held no official position and solved crimes through pure analysis. The idea was radical at the time. The outsider can outthink the institution. That premise has driven crime fiction for nearly 2 centuries now. Agatha Christie crystallized it with Miss Marple, who solved crimes not through academic brilliance, but through a lifetime of studying human nature in a small community. Same structure across the Golden Age. All clues visible to the reader. The detective always an outsider, order always restored. The formula was deeply reassuring. Chaos is solvable. A perceptive person can set things right. Then something shifted around 2012. Gone Girl launched what critics now call domestic suspense, psychological thrillers driven by civilian protagonists entangled in the crimes they're investigating. The Girl on the Train followed. The amateur's lack of credentials was no longer a potential liability, but rather became the dramatic engine. The messy personal investment became the whole point. Technology has only accelerated this. Google, social media, open source intelligence tools. Civilians now have investigative capabilities that once required a license. True crime culture normalized the citizen investigator as a social identity. There are over 19 million weekly true crime podcast listeners in the U.S. alone. Reddit communities and TikTok sleuths regularly surface real evidence in real cases. Many readers don't just accept the amateur sleuth premise anymore, they already consider themselves amateur sleuths. And then there's the institutional distrust, which I think is the least discussed but maybe the most powerful driver. When readers perceive official systems as broken and polling data on trusted institutions near all-time lows, fiction about ordinary people stepping in becomes more than entertainment. It becomes an aspirational fantasy. The amateur sleuth doesn't wait for the system to work. She solves it herself. And the resolution is guaranteed, which real institutions rarely provide. In an anxious era, that guarantee isn't escapism, it's closer to therapy. The archetype, of course, keeps evolving. The senior sleuth, whose social invisibility becomes a superpower. Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club has sold 15 million copies for a reason. The expert amateur, who brings deep knowledge of a specific field. The tech-enabled citizen. Unburdened by procedure, he's able to investigate almost unfeathered and just as quickly and deeply as the police. What ties all these together is at the core the same Poe premise. The outsider sees what the institution misses. It worked in 1841, and it's still working today. The formula hasn't expired, it's just been transformed. For even more on this, I'll link to the full piece on my website in the show notes. All right, let's wrap up with what I've been reading and watching. Right now, I'm reading Wolf Hour, the new serial killer standalone by Jo Nesbø, most famous to genre fans here for his Harry Hole series set in Norway, and an aside, soon to become a Netflix series at the end of March. This one's set in the U.S. in Minneapolis, which makes it an interesting experiment for the primarily Scandinavian writer. It's very early days for me, but I'm genuinely curious to see where the always interesting Nesbo's writerly quirks take him in America. Early signs are promising. Same Nesbo, different location. On audio, I just finished Geneva Rose's Home is Where the Bodies Are, a Goodreads Choice nominee last year. It's a fast listen with a great opening hook. 3 siblings going through their parents' belongings stumble onto a box of old VHS tapes. They settle in for some nostalgia, and then one tape from 1999 shows their father covered in blood, a dead body, and their parents making a pact to cover it up before the tape cuts out. That's a hell of a cold open. I'll admit I had some trouble turning off my writer brain and stop picking apart the story mechanics as they developed. Sort of an occupational hazard and maybe not your problem. And yes, maybe it tips a little bit more towards the predictable in the back half. But here's the thing. The pages were turning so fast, I'm not sure it really mattered. Sometimes a book just moves, and that counts for a lot. On the TV front, I just finished Steel on Amazon Prime, and it's worth your time with a few caveats. It's a British heist thriller starring Sophie Turner, and the setup is sharp. The first episode is awesome. An ordinary office worker at a London pension fund finds herself at the center of the biggest heist in British history when armed thieves storm in and force her and her best friend to execute their demands. Like I said, the first episode is slick, it's confident. That being said, the following episodes are a little quieter, still tense at times, but it often gets tangled up in its own complexity and can sometimes lose the momentum. Bottom line, it's worth watching. It's just 6 episodes. If you're in the mood for a fast, stylish, British crime drama, Turner alone is really worth the 6-episode commitment. She is great, a good reminder that she has a lot to offer beyond Game of Thrones. Think of it as a very good laundry folding show that occasionally rises above that, which honestly is better than most things on TV right now. All right, that's a wrap for episode 17. Let me leave you with this week's question. Who is your favorite amateur sleuth in fiction or on screen? Jessica Fletcher? Hercule Poirot? One of the Thursday Murder Club's retirees? Or maybe a less obvious pick you think doesn't get enough? Drop me a line. I'd love to feature some listener answers in a future episode. You can email me at mike@mikedonahuebooks.com or find me on Blue Sky at Mike D. Mystery or Instagram and Facebook at Mike Donohue Books. This has been Unreliable Sources. I'm Mike Donohue. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay sharp, follow the clues, and don't trust anyone who skips to the end.